Hello, my name is Yana Lyashenko, and I am a Google logistician. I focus on delivering businesses' target audience. In today's video, I will be showcasing a case study of our team's work with an advertising account. Our market is Germany. I will show what the client came with, what we struggled with, and what we have somewhat achieved, as well as the complexities of the advertising account. What do we have here? Let's see. Here we have income. You can see the income here. Initially, our target profitability here is not below 3, just to set the expectations. This is not some super high value like in Ukraine, where it might be 10 or 8, and so on. This is a relatively reasonable and achievable conversion cost. I will explain what caused the drop in profitability and the increase in conversion costs. In short, we will analyze everything now. Our online store is essentially an online store for decor and gift items for various occasions like birthdays or Valentine's Day. Well, in short, it's both decor and gifts for people. There's a very diverse product assortment. I won't go into any details. We will be reviewing all this work. What did the client come with? They came with. We started around February 26th. So, just to give you a point of reference, that's our start date. The client came with approximately this picture. They experienced a drop. That is, the cost per conversion significantly increased, conversions dropped, and reach declined in the advertising campaigns. What is the reason? Of course, one could say that the client edited something incorrectly. No, this is mainly due to the derivative work, most likely the adjustment of the global Google tag itself. Is there a way to deal with this? In principle, yes. Specialists can't always make everything super perfect, fine-tune everything beautifully, or debug everything perfectly. As you can see here, our cost per conversion was quite high. However, if you properly train artificial intelligence to generate the desired results and performance, you can more or less bring it to a fairly decent outcome. As we experienced a period of quite significant, even very sharp growth here. So, what happened here? We won't delve into it too much, just a bit more. There is a condition that the client did not put much effort into making adjustments, which was not the case here. In other words, he did not particularly stress over his performance metrics. Here, it was mainly due to a malfunction or disruption in the performance itself. What influenced this? A very high probability. This is what I talked about in my Telegram channel. This was at the end of January when the global tag was being redone. It looked very much like that. In February and on March 6th, there were also disruptions. You can even see it here. I mean, these disruptions are very noticeable. Can they be influenced? It is not possible to immediately and significantly correct the entire situation in such critical moments, because these disruptions are not due to something you are doing wrong in the advertising account. These disruptions are mainly due to the overhaul and change of the methods used by these smart algorithms. I remind you that on March 6th, Google completely switched from third-party data to first-party data. This is very noticeable, and having a specialist can help in most cases to smoothly navigate through all these turbulent moments. For example, I have a case involving auto parts in Ukraine, where you can clearly see the graph when we started to stabilize the situation slightly. Here as well, starting from February 26th, as soon as we took over the account, we significantly increased the conversion value, meaning we greatly improved profitability. Our target was a 3, and we increased it to a 6. Naturally, we did not expect it on March 6th, of course, because the site was polished. It had long been tailored for Germany with all these parameters of content mode. There was nothing to criticize, but still, this change greatly affected the performance. Can we say that the specialist could do nothing here? No, there would have been a decline here if it weren't for the specialist who managed everything, roughly equivalent to the decline that occurred from February 15th to 16th. Naturally, this entire decline could have been influenced by the period around February 14th, Valentine's Day, or other factors, but no, globally it was very significant even after that. The drop in demand after Valentine's Day only exacerbated this performance, meaning one thing compounded another, resulting in such a significant overall decline. Here, we have already balanced and increased profitability and other metrics. Now, we are scaling conversions in terms of these target KPIs. What can be said about the specifics? The advertising account was accepted with an already existing fairly large structure. There were many advertising campaigns divided into specific, let's say, structures for certain tasks, for certain signals. Of course, we could have completely overhauled and redone some of them, but our task was not to break, but to improve. Therefore, all the work was focused on retaining the old companies that came to us in their original form, keeping them at the same level, or at least preventing a significant drop in their performance by half. Why? Because they are essentially the cash cow in this advertising account, and it is very important to keep them at a more or less stable level. Because if we assume the next planned value was at least to work with zero products that had less than a certain number of impressions in the advertising account. But if we had started to heavily emphasize and push the display of these products, we would most likely have only damaged these main top advertising campaigns during these very challenging performance periods. As much as we would like to immediately boost this result significantly, it would be impossible to do so. We would only ruin the structure. How do we know this? This is known from practice. Going through such difficult periods when Googlers make changes, when some changes are made to performance algorithms, you need to navigate through this situation. The next difficulty we faced during this period was that we had a set of approximately 10 advertising campaigns, all with the same set of product positions. These products essentially competed very strongly with each other for the main search queries. Yes, indeed, the signals in these performances were quite very generally and comparatively distinctly different, but as we know, a signal in performance is not a rigidly set framework that cannot be exceeded. These are the initial basic directions for performance. After the first A, B tests or a series of A, B tests, it can completely change the targeting, conditionally competing for the same product position, for the same targeting of the same products in different advertising campaigns. It is advisable to avoid such competition in advertising campaigns when we have the same products in different campaigns. Why? Because there can be a situation where performances enter a very close symbiosis, where they help each other convert these people, and it may happen that one of the performances generates a relatively higher cost per conversion or lower profitability. But at the same time, it serves as an auxiliary tool for the other performance. Why? Because usually, although people can complete a conversion within the first day, for example, they might do so after 2 or 3 interactions within that day, meaning they visit your site 2 or 3 times. At the same time, the same situation occurs in other projects, so sometimes they enter into such a connection, into some associated conversions. Therefore, the primary task in such a structure was not to break it globally, but to do it gradually, slowly, so that performance did not significantly drop in conversions. As you can see here, there was no significant drop or decline in these conversions. Yes, I know, the chart against the backdrop of these big analytics mountains doesn't look very attractive. Here you can already see how the same mass of conversions is conditionally increasing. These twists and turns accompany this entire block of work. Why can this take a very long time? Because essentially, we took over the advertising account here, and we increased profitability. Right away, we saw a drop in the cost per conversion, which started off very well. Then, after March 6th, we experienced some fluctuations because, following adjustments in Performance Max, there is a sort of buffer period. This is my personal observation. I see that there are literally 3 to 4 days of recalibration, likely because artificial intelligence is calculating possible solutions to find the most probable way to achieve the sale through different mechanisms. During the training, you see that this audience will perform best, and the machine learning builds on that, further adapting to a specific client avatar and targeting them through various types of targeting. It's quite complex and sophisticated. So, for example, if we make some changes today on the 26th, we can only start evaluating their effect from around the 4th to the 7th day. The first 3 days is a bit more expensive. At best, because when we adjust budgets or profitability, it conditionally allocates a larger portion of the daily budget to some A/B tests in order to try and test where something might work. I'm telling you this approximately because I didn't write this advertising tool. These are all my personal observations and findings. So, for the first 3 to 4 days, there are constant A/B tests, and by the fourth or fifth day, we can roughly estimate what will continue to generate this performance in the future. That is, it's complete, and in addition to this, we also have, for example, intra-week fluctuations. For instance, we make changes on Monday, and by Thursday, we can already observe what performance will generate further. But there are inter-week fluctuations. For example, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday can differ significantly from the typical behavior on, say, Monday or Wednesday. So, we need to extend this period after the seventh day by at least 3 days to assess whether the performance remains stable in generating a certain number of conversions under the required KPI that we need. For example, either the cost per conversion or, in this case, profitability. This means that it doesn't imply we did nothing during this period. This is constant monitoring of performance day by day. That is, if during the day a specialist, for example, sees that the impressions or clicks of a certain product position are not moving in the right direction, they make changes earlier. However, this procedure can conditionally stretch over more time. In Ukraine, naturally, since the competition is not as fierce and the algorithms do not impose very strict limitations, for example, on profitability or other factors, it is easier and faster to achieve results there. Since we are considering the German market, which is quite affluent compared to most countries in Europe, not the richest, of course, but one of the wealthiest countries in Europe, accordingly. The competition is higher and the most local requirements for settings differ from, for example, those in Ukraine or even Poland. In Poland, it is much easier and faster to achieve approximately the same results as in Germany, which is why it extends over a certain period of time. So, we had pieces, at first everything stabilized. We were ready by March 6th, but on March 6th, part of it broke down. We tried to stabilize this chain through product analysis, and once the whole story stabilized, we started trying to increase conversions with different breakthroughs and spikes. They are usually called clicks or costs. You can see how the graph fluctuates in waves, sometimes dropping down. These are not only weekly fluctuations, but also these spikes. In addition to these breakthroughs, there is also, for example, the cyclicality of the performance itself. Few people notice, but their advertising campaigns also have a cyclical nature. That is, on certain days of the month, performance relies more on the same dynamic remarketing lists for this analysis, while during other periods, it completely stops referring to it and generates entirely new A/B tests. There are indeed some advertising accounts that interact with this less, meaning that their performance work is not as noticeable as in others, conditionally. But if you observe the work, the tracking of all your interactions with the global tag itself or with specific data, you will see this cyclicity. You need to observe for at least 3 months, and you will see during which periods the performance decreases, where the number of calls to dynamic remarketing parameters decreases, and where, on the contrary, it brings back the whole story. This is all observable, and you can do the same. Here, for example, you can see that overall profitability has increased and the cost per conversion has decreased. However, it is mentioned that when a client wants a lot and very quickly, sometimes achieving quick results isn't just about simply increasing the budget. The most basic way to scale any advertising campaign result is to give it more money because, at the very least, you have a set of products that can be considered cash cows that increase conversions as soon as you give them more traffic. Well, traffic depends on the amount of money. Here, several factors have come into play. One of them is the gradual increase of the budget by the specialists, but the client also helped here. Certainly, it is a bit unusual since the client does not approve the changes that need to be made. As you can see, it very strangely affects the effectiveness. Therefore, another difficulty is that you should not expect it to be very easy to break through these conversion ceilings in European countries, highly competitive markets, or in the same states or Australia. So, you see here we are collecting the same conversions, simultaneously improving profitability and reducing the cost for conversion. This is all happening in parallel here. You see, during this period, we are increasing profitability. It drops a bit because there is this buffer period. You can track all of this through the change history if you go in here. Here again, we are increasing the same profitability. Our orange profitability is rising to 4.57, which is higher than the target KPI. We have conversions, definitely. We have another spike in conversions. And then naturally, we have a not very good result on May 8th. But this is still an unfinished result. Plus, keep in mind that in any advertising account, the more conversions per day, the more the number of conversions for the last 3 days will be recalculated. So I can more or less analyze the numbers for the 8th only after about 3 days, which is 8 plus 3, around May 11th. And even then, on the 12th, I can see a more presentable number of conversions. In short, I might have explained some very complex math here, but what can you take away as useful from this case? First, always try to consistently monitor the effectiveness of your performance. Well, of course, if I say daily, there are businesses that check in once a month or even less. Naturally, try to monitor performance at least once every 3 to 4 days, because at the very least, the number of conversions can be recalculated retroactively. Google will do this even on the purchase tag, even on the attribution model retroactively. Second, if you see a very poor result today, it does not necessarily mean that it is actually the case. You need to log into your admin panel, check the overall conversion volume and possibly sales, because the basic quantity does not correspond to reality. As we can see here, for example, on May 8th, when I am recording this video, it shows only 62 sales with a terrible profitability of 1.33 and supposedly a conversion cost of 24.33. But for example, on previous days it might have looked similar, but it will most likely improve. That is, truly on May 6th, it will most likely improve over time. The next important nuance is to avoid scaling your advertising campaigns simply by duplicating current campaigns for similar products or the same clothing items across different campaigns, as this can just prolong the startup period. Plus, such periods of disruptions in work specifically from Google's side will be a great temptation for performance to target the same audience. So you will have approximately 10 performances initially launched on different targetings, but they will revolve around a very narrow segment of people, and that's it, nothing will come of it. Next, don't hesitate to work separately on them and conduct A/B tests for products that are not showing up for you. In almost every advertising account, 70% of the products might potentially have 0 or very limited impressions, in fact. In other words, this quantity is always measured relative to other products. I usually call them zeros. These are products that sit as dead weight, but reserve a budget just in case. Because each of the advertising campaigns uses an even method of budget distribution. The uniform budget allocation method suggests taking this budget, roughly estimating the number of products, forecasting the traffic volume for each, and reserving just in case this product position is shown. Naturally, he won't show it, nor will he spend your advertising budgets. You keep an eye on that. The simplest thing you can do is just simply play around with just these zeros. You can painlessly turn them off in old performances or current performances and experiment with them in new ones. You can experiment with them in new ones. Either different strategies or adding some signals. But believe me, if you have performance of this kind, you can basically not use any signals on new zero levels. You can even apply the absence of an object. If you want to steadily increase the number of these conversions, don't hesitate to do so. In other words, the initial data will be your foundation for scaling. In this account, of course, there are nuances when working with zero-rated items because the products still compete with each other for the same queries. So if it's a query for Rosenbar, or however it is correctly in German, or Rosenteddy bar, it will naturally still compete. They will still, let's say, these 1,000 bears or something else, they will compete with each other to enter the auction. But gradually, you can increase this mass in terms of conversions, and it will be noticeable against the background of all other work. The main thing is not to rush too much, because you might make a significant mistake somewhere in the numbers. Everything might seem correct and profitable, but it can fall apart. Therefore, it is better to create a set of more or less stable advertising campaigns and conduct tests in new campaigns. This is a complex case to describe for those who love to delve into technical details and nuances, wondering why this way and not another, and other such interesting details.